really, at the end of the day, it's just a matter of a macro market. It's just what happens.
That's why it's really important to have a plan. Have a plan and understand what your goals are.
In fact, my camel out there is suffering right now with a broken back.
So I actually found Pepe when it was only a couple of hours old, and I'm like, oh, this is a funny meme.
Oh my god.
Yo! Who is this Degen?
The old man is swing trading over years at a time. And it's like, that's where the real money is made.
The answer is impermanent loss. With single-sided staking, you don't have to worry about impermanent loss.
If you're aware, if you're disciplined, you can hone that into further financial growth.
Financial freedom, so where you can actually live life and not have to be constantly living paycheck to paycheck. I mean, that's the ultimate goal, more or less, right?
And we are live. Welcome, everybody, to the Degen Roundtable. Welcome, Degens and Degenettes, to another episode of our Sunday show. Today, we have our co-host, our man Zenith. Got a lot of information to drop in your heads today. We got Nate McGidditt, also known as you don't want to mess with him. Don't want to mess with him. Don't want to take his dog. Don't want to kill his dog. I don't recommend that.
That's right. Leave my dog alone, fuckers.
And we got Will Stevenson, the man, the myth, the legend, the meter of people. Will Stevenson. How y'all doing tonight?
Doing very well. If anybody has been following the rest of our shows this week, we've been teasing this particular episode since Monday, effectively the day after the last episode. And that is because when it comes to legal and government stuff, we've had a lot of breaking news this week, and we want to try to cover as much as we possibly can. We have suffered through the boring stuff, and we are trying to bring you guys just the sauce because, my God, congressional hearings hurt.
I hear you,
man. That was ridiculous to listen to. When God. I watched that whole part. I was like, oh, I watched a bit more as well, but yeah, it was juicy.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel like I sat through like 4 or 5 hours of people talking, and you know, even on 1.5x, it's a lot to get through. And then there's times we might want to go back and re-listen to something because you know I wasn't paying attention or something was happening. But guess what? We do that so we can bring you the juiciest, most current information happening in the cryptocurrency market. Currently, we are looking at a crypto market cap of 2.668 trillion, which is pretty incredible considering we haven't even reached the Bitcoin halving yet. Now, we had a bit of a dip this week, and we've been wondering, hey, are we going to have a left translated cycle? Are we going to have a right translated cycle? And today's close, which I'm not going to tell you what it was fairly important to give us some potential information of where we could go over the next 30 to 60 days. So we're going to get into that. We're also going to touch base, as Zenith mentioned, about the SEC taking a massive loss in court. In fact, I would argue that it's the biggest loss the SEC and the biggest judgment handed against them in the history of the SEC in court cases. So this can't be understated with how big of a deal this is and how big of a deal this could be for the crypto market moving forward. Because let me tell you, they're not getting the benefit of the doubt anymore. You know, the SEC, if they took someone to court, they were just getting the benefit of the doubt. That isn't happening anymore, and we're starting to see the trickle-down effects of all of these L's they're taking in court. So we'll get into that a bit more. We're also going to touch base on a little bit of European Union. What are they doing? Are they going to make it illegal to transfer crypto? ? I think there's a lot of FUD going around what they just passed as a bill, and I'm not gonna break any secrets until we get to that. But there is some really interesting topics to discuss. We also want to touch on Japan, who is the largest retirement fund in the world, looking into adding Bitcoin to their portfolio. So we're going to talk about that and other companies that have said similar. We may get into the FOMC meeting, what interest rates are going to look like in the near, medium, and long future. And then we're going to also bring you a little bit of potential hopium in regards to the Richard Hart case, in regards to the Pulse chain and Hex ecosystems. And is Richard Hart actually trying to hint at a few things that he thinks are going to happen in the near future? You will have to stay tuned to find out. But until then, sit back, crack open a cold one, and enjoy the ride. All right. Anybody have anything they want to add before we roll into TA?
No, I say let's get into it.
I agree. Zenith, why don't we dive into some TA? I think this is a pretty important week, and we've had some ups and downs. We've had some dippity dips. We've had some rallies. What are we looking at right now?
Absolutely. Yes, I am sharing my screen. If Mrs. Producer will do me the honor.
We got you.
Excellent. Alrighty. So, like we were talking about earlier, we just had our daily close for the candle sitting at just about $67,000 for the Bitcoin chart. One of the reasons that we wanted to cover TA today in a particularly heavy news day is that there is also a sort of like cycle macro event that happened, which is a possible contender for a cycle low that happened here on day 57 when we had Bitcoin drop all the way down to about 60,800. That was a low, and then there was a massive green candle on this day. You can see we climbed right back up to somewhat of a reasonable area that we've been floating around in for a hot minute. But that's just something to watch out if you believe that this might be a three-wave correctional pattern. So we have one going up for two, and then the last bit of this leg is going to be a new low somewhere below. That is something that a lot of people have been talking about lately because notoriously Bitcoin does do a bit of a correction or a bit of a dump either before or really right after the halving. And sometimes it's even up to about 30% or sometimes more. So a 30% correction at this point would drop down to about 51,000. I got to say, with all the momentum that we've seen going on, it seems rather unlikely. Also, the RSI would have to tank massively. So we do have a potential cycle low here at 57 days. Notably, we did have our cycle high at 51 days. If you have your cycle high after day 30 of the cycle, then that means that typically the cycle has a tendency to run a little bit longer. These are more of just, they're not hard and fast rules, but these are more of just loose guidelines that we try to follow when it comes to the 60-day cycles. So another potential cycle low could be coming, but as with this, there already is a contender for a cycle low, so we're just going to keep an eye on that. If you want to look at some basic support and resistance stuff, we're coming up on the 20-day moving average. It looks like it might be starting to act as a little bit of resistance now that we've broken down below it. However, at the same time, we're still well above any of our other daily moving averages. So again, momentum, in my opinion, seems to be on the side of Bitcoin at this point. And with the halving only 22 days away, effectively, we're looking to have some major macro events that could be well lasting into the rest of the year effectively, because the halving is the narrative that's driving the Bitcoin market right now. Back at other support and resistances, we are so high up that we now have to go way back in the data to find any previous data. This is back from the double top of 2021. Previously, we had the first of the double tops at about 65,000, and then we had the second double top at 69,000, just a hair shy of it. You can see right here that we are lining up very nicely with one of the peaks right before the final top, which is at 67,000. And then again, we don't have much data because we just haven't been this high for so long, and we only got this high like once before. So we're pretty much in price discovery. So be aware that things can move quickly away from you if you are not ready for it. Looking at the rest of some of the market, we have Ethereum, very much similar structure to Bitcoin. And along with altcoins, we'll start off with DOT. Again, all the charts are going to have a lot of the same structure because Bitcoin does lead the market. There are a few exceptions. One of them is going to be Phantom. Phantom has just been on an absolute tear. It had a little bit of a dip along the similar time as Bitcoin, but it set its new high here, different than when Bitcoin had its all-time high. Additionally, if we want to go look at Solana, Solana was another coin that was charting slightly differently than Bitcoin, but again, similar top area, just a few days later than Bitcoin. And let's see, you want to give the people some Illuvium? How's that? Illuvium, different structure than Bitcoin. It seems to be operating under different fundamentals right now. So there are tokens out there that are operating not under pure Bitcoin influence, but under their own kind of like system macros going on. But that's what we got for that. If you want to look at traditional markets, S&P 500 has been on a steady climb ever since. And I believe this candle right here, the green one, that was the day that Jerome Powell was doing the Fed meeting. And if you look at the hourly chart, the last 2 hours on that day were massive green candles showing that the market liked what Daddy Powell was telling them is going to be coming in the future. Any questions on TA, or are we ready to roll into some other stuff?
All right.
Alrighty.
Fast and furious. Thank you, buddy. Yeah, so before we roll into anything else, let's give some shout outs to the chats here. Let's see. Centurion, first comment of the day, far before the show started. Thank you so much for checking in. Much appreciated. USA. Hey, I want to give a quick shout out to United States men's national soccer team, who has a big Nations League match tonight against Mexico. So let's hope they get a big W. They start about 9:15, so I will be catching the second half after I hop off this. Who else we got in the house tonight? Black Sheep, up in the streets. Let's go. Welcome. Thank you so much. Moondog, love and light. Welcome. Agent J, damn, man, we miss you more than you miss us, all right? Can't wait to have you back. Hope the move is going well. Hope you and the waifu are getting all settled. And can't wait to have you back on soon, baby. We still poor? I don't know. Depends if you bought the bottoms or if you bought the tops. If you bought the bottom, you're probably not poor anymore. If you bought the top and then bought the bottom, well, you're probably in a pretty good place as we continue to move up. So. Someone throw up that Pepe meme with Nate's hair rolled in there. Dre giving shade to Nate all day.
Hey guys, I hate to be a wet blanket and whatnot, but I actually have to hop off. There's some pressing matters that require my attention. You guys have a wonderful stream. It's been fantastic seeing everyone in the chats, and I wish you all the best in the near future and stuff. But
see you soon, brother.
I gotta hop off, bro.
You have to. Yep.
Much love to everyone. Good night.
Speed. All right. Zach Ken saying we call them poor from Michael Saylor.
And then
Michael Saylor says a lot of things. I hope that we get more excellent meme fodder from Michael Saylor moving into the future. I know it might be a lesser known one, but one of my favorite interviews that he did is the guy saying, "Why are you all in on Bitcoin?" And then he fires back with, "Are you all in on that chair? How many chairs are you sitting on? Is it one chair?"
Michael Saylor has no chill. Michael Saylor has no chill. Look, what I respect about him is he has conviction. Until he sells a damn Bitcoin, I don't think the man's ever selling. I have to take him at his word. He says, I'm going to buy the top, and he keeps buying the top. He bought another 600 Bitcoin, last week when it was literally at the top? He doesn't care. When he has the money, he's going to buy Bitcoin. And until he sells anything, to me, that's like burnt Bitcoin. And that's Bitcoin that you can't buy.
That's pretty true. That's something to think about, which is that how much of the Bitcoin being bought up by institutions and major whales will ever be back on the market? I would argue.
And countries.
And countries, too.
El Salvador said they're buying one Bitcoin every day until the halvening. They're adding to their stack. Why wouldn't they? I don't think they're selling anytime soon.
Doesn't sound like it.
Automatic buying bird, baby. That's really good. That is boulash.
Automatic buy and burn effectively as a result of all this stuff going on. Thanks, No Money Mike. Yes, the financial sauce boss. Well, today it's more of government and legal sauce. And by the way, like I said in the chats earlier, it's a very bland flavor. It's somewhere between the taste of a gray suit and a number 2 pencil.
What else we got up in here? Tam.
Good to see ya.
One of the number 1 fans. Thank you for popping in. Angry Twinkie.
Mr. Angry Twinkie.
By the way, Angry Twinkie had some really great information this week. So check out his YouTube. Some really good, pertinent videos right at the time that things happen. So if you're not following him for some fire news, Hex Glenn, welcome. You might like some of the information we have for you tonight, good sir, on Richard Hart and all of the Richard Hart ecosystem. Pulse Chain, Pulse XX, Inc., and the rest of them. T-shares for days. Look, I almost want to say this. I started buying Hex when it was pretty high, and then it went low, and I just kept buying more. And all of that Ethereum Hex got copied over to Pulse Chain Hex. So I feel pretty good about myself. Bradley, thanks for checking in, buddy. Appreciate it. Always was a big fan. I met Bradley in person in Miami not that long ago, and that was a good time. Really good to meet the community when they're coming into town. So if anyone comes to Miami and you don't reach out to me, I'm going to be a little bit upset. What else? We got any other? I think that is just about everything. So thank you all for joining us. We do have the best community in crypto, and it's growing by the day. If you're not in our Telegram, get in there because we are still doing private calls when it matters. Moonpill Optics, welcome. Glad to have you. We have a lot of regulars in the house tonight, a few new faces. So wonderful to see that. All right, shall we hop into it?
Let's do it. I have my screen share up and I am ready when everyone else is.
So here we go. The first thing we're talking about is the SEC, and we are going to mention.
I am going to mention this real quick. I realized I forgot it in my TA. Just as a shout out to Dre Sims, one of the OGs of the community and the channel. He popped in on book club on Friday to tell people that the Pulse and PulseX and Hex ecosystem right now, all the RH coins, they look like they might be on a bit of a discount. This is not financial advice. I'm just saying we haven't seen these prices in a hot minute, so it may be one of the last times to finalize a position before we start climbing up or before any Richard Hart news starts breaking out and causing this stuff to bump independently. By the way, I do have a special shout out to Axis and anyone in Axis gang. The Axis token randomly did a 9.5x in a single day. Yes, crazy. That was wild to watch. So shout out to Axis and all you guys over there. With that being said, let's get into the first topic of today. Yes.
Before you pop into that, Dre just said join them Tuesday calls for the sauce. What Dre is talking about is every Tuesday in our Telegram we have a private call for anyone that is in our Telegram, and that is private sauce. And we give you some really great information that we don't put out on YouTube. And it's free. It's free to join our Telegram for now. So get in there, get into our Tuesday calls. And then honestly, anytime something breaks, anytime big news happens, oftentimes we have private, immediate emergency calls in our Telegram. So we are always trying to provide you value before anybody else. And I can tell you that we have talked to our community far before anyone has tweeted or put any videos out about things that have happened. So we do try to be on the pulse of the crypto markets. Speaking of pulses, Zenith, how about the pulse of the SEC? How are they doing right now?
They might be on life support, or at least this much. I'll say they're hemorrhaging. So the clip that I'm about to show all you fine folks at home, this comes from the hearing on Tuesday titled SEC Overreach, Examining the Need for Reform. This is a congressional hearing by the House Financial Oversight Committee. This one specifically is coming after the news that we had of the Dropbox event, where the SEC was sanctioned for abuse of power, or excuse me, Debtbox is the name of the case, and the crypto company, or rather project for this one. They were sanctioned for an abuse of power when they effectively were misleading and misrepresenting evidence in order to get a temporary restraining order. What that did is that was actually able to freeze bank accounts of up to about $750,000 because they claimed that it was a foreign transfer, but in reality, it ended up being a transfer between two American citizens. So the SEC lied effectively to get that temporary restraining order, and then every opportunity that they had to either renew the restraining order or be questioned about the evidence, they doubled down again and again and again, and the judge really slapped him down on this one. Specifically, this clip from this hearing comes from Congressman Hill. This is a bit of a good summary of all the L's that the SEC has been taking lately, and there's also a part 2 when I want to talk about a different tool that was brought up by the SEC. So remember how much winning they're doing right now. How would you feel if I told you that the SEC wants to track all of your data ever done in any trades of a brokerage account? I'm talking about all of BlackRock, and then I'm talking about your 80-year-old grandma. All of it. All of your information. With that said, though, let's start with the first clip. Here we go.
And now we can't hear it.
I don't hear it.
Oh my.
I wonder what changed.
Sometimes we share with.
Let's try this again, please.
It worked.
Yeah, when you do a test and it works, but then it's not working. There we go.
Not only has the SEC lost in the court of public opinion, even on a bipartisan base here on Capitol Hill. But the agency is now getting trampled by the federal courts as well, especially as it relates to digital assets. In July 2023, a New York judge determined that Ripple Labs did not violate federal securities law by selling its XRP token on public exchanges. In fact, in that case, they were referred to as being arbitrary and capricious. Last August, the court rejected the SEC's reasoning for blocking Grayscale's Bitcoin trust from converting to an exchange-traded fund. And just in the last few days, a Utah judge imposed sanctions on the SEC for, quote, bad faith conduct and, open quote, gross abuse of power, close quote, that the commission had demonstrated in a case against Dropbox. And this is important because we haven't talked about this in a long time in this committee. And as a result of that gross abuse of power, the commission is required to pay the legal fees, which means that our constituent tax dollars are now being used to pay for the SEC's overreach and failure. So whether it's refusing to comply with the Administrative Procedures Act or not, or providing clear rules of the road for the digital asset ecosystem, it's clear that the SEC under Gary Gensler blatantly and repeatedly oversteps its statutory authority.
There we go. Clip number one. Yes, this is a new notch in the bedpost of people taking down the SEC, so to speak. This one comes after, yes, like they said, the Utah court determined that this case was so egregious that the SEC was liable to pay they were sanctioned to pay all of the cost incurred by the defendant in the case, aka legal fees, effectively time off based on everything that they had to take and prepare material for this case. But again, this is a gross misuse of power, because the agency was misrepresenting and lying about crucial evidence needed to get specific temporary restraining orders against these people. One of the things that the judge specifically calls out is saying that you have effectively ruined the reputation of the SEC. A lot of times there's been an institutional trust with trusting that the government and all the agents within it are doing their best work that they possibly can. But here, it's just a blatant and obvious disregard for the rules and honestly just believing that the restrictions of governmental power does not apply to them. So this is why this is going to be a monumental case moving forward. And I think that this is going to have lasting impacts coming down the road, because now every action that the SEC applies for legally is going to be scrutinized so much more than before, and people are not going to grant them that trust or credibility. Not that us over here think that they deserve it in the first place, but now this is official, on the record by federal judges.
Okay, so question then. I know that it seems like they wanted the restraining order and able to freeze funds, right, from Debtbox, but is that the only reason? And then if that's the case, then why did they want to freeze the funds? It seems like they just wanted to shut it down and say, we're all done with you.
Yeah. Go ahead, Zenith. You take it first.
I'm going to have to double check my sources on this one, but I believe that the reason, if you operate on the assumption that the reason they wanted the restraining order was correct, which is that they presented the idea that this money was being transferred to a foreign entity, and this would, if I might be messing this one up, but I believe it is the Logan Act, which is specifically talking about providing foreign aid to potential adversaries of the U.S. They wanted to do something like that to shut down that kind of transaction with this specific crypto project. Yeah,
and I think also there's some worry about potential. Hey, if foreign money is coming in, they might jump the country to try to get out of the case, because look how much money they have. You know what I mean? So there was also this this other side of it of, hey, are they even going to stay in the United States?
Precisely.
Answer your question, Nate?
Yeah. I think the most ridiculous part about that is that they tried to make it fraudulent when it was very obviously, like, you can just go into the blockchain and see it, and it was from US to US, internal, and they're trying to say it was international. These people really don't know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah, and international, they may have even said international government if they were talking about the Logan Act. By the way, the Logan Act goes back to 1799. I mean, we're talking about our forefathers, seeing what the future could be. And it's funny how a lot of these statutes that they put into place are always trying to be overridden and taking our rights into the hands of people that don't deserve them. You know what else is my right? My money. And if you're going to take my tax dollars, you better well damn use them for something that's of good, which I know. I mean, I'm kind of like on a soapbox because they don't use our tax dollars in a very well manner to begin with. But it's the worst when a government agency is lying so that they now have to pay additional court fees of the person that they took to court. It's awful. Those are our dollars, our tax dollars. What else, Zenith?
I just wanted to point this out here, which is that the reason that I think agencies, and especially agents within these agencies, have a tendency sometimes to fall down this route, which is that you start reaching for things and you start trying to make boogeymen out of things that are not there. You start to see monsters in the shadows that do not exist. And it's pretty much when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. This is something that, by the way, the comment I just posted in the chat highlights a good friend of our channel and good friend of mine, Nuclear Herbs. He is a lawyer, a former active lawyer, and he actually talks about a lot of crypto legal stuff on Twitter. Does excellent breaks down. This one in particular, he does a fantastic job of breaking down the 80-page summary from the judge and converts it from judge speak to normal people speak about how screwed the SEC was in this one. Mm-hmm. But my point of hammers in search of a nail is that this is a tendency that sometimes federal agencies and any sort of enforcement agency has a tendency towards gravitate, because it's, as an individual, you want to do the best at your job. That is completely understandable and respectable. If anything, if you're not trying to do your job the best you can, then you might have some questions to answer to begin with. But if you're an enforcement agency, then that means that you doing your job means going after bad guys. And it kind of takes a little bit of self-introspection to understand that are you actually pursuing crimes, or you're pursuing people that you believe have been committing crimes, whether or not you like them or whether or not you think the crimes might be particularly egregious. Again, it's just trying to make sure that you don't ghost hunt. And then I will invoke a little bit of the founding fathers here, which is that Alexander Hamilton actually spoke about this problem previously. He's known as the father of the Coast Guard, and originally it was the Revenue Cutter Service who was responsible for levying taxes on incoming ships to help the nation grow and get out of the massive debt that they created when getting going in the Revolutionary War. One of the things he talks about is that understand that you are public servants. However, the very nature of your service to the public is infringing on the public to a certain degree. You're going against people trying to operate on a quick, efficient business timeline by boarding their ships, asking them about their contents, and taxing them duly. You can understand that the average person is not going to be happy about that. However, there's that balance where you have to strike between enforcement and professionalism and not infringing on free men. In this case, with Debtbox, it very much was the case where these agents, for some reason, believed that they were hunting this thing, and then instead of just outright telling the judge the truth about all the evidence, they were misrepresenting it in certain ways so that it could be possibly construed as certain things, and they asserted things as facts, even though it was more of inferences. That's the kind of overreach where you get to the point where you start to get smacked down, and Gary Gensler adds up another L in his terrible win-loss record.
Seriously. I mean, since he lost to Ripple, what has he won? Every single person that has decided to take them to court, no contest. Now, this is the most egregious overstep of authority power, but it's not like any of the other decisions that have been handed down have been light, right? You talked about it earlier. Some of the wording and the language that these judges have used against the SEC is really unprecedented, especially for a government agency that continues to try to enact by legislation, right? By court rule, right? By force. And even though they keep losing, they keep doing the same thing. So, Gina, let me ask you this. What is it going to take for the SEC to stop bringing these cases to court? Is Gary Gensler going to need to get fired? Are we going to need better regulation? Are we going to need some more information to come down from our government? What's next?
To be honest, this was something that was covered in the congressional hearing, which is that it appears that a lot of what's been going on with the SEC is very much top level strategy of how they're trying to operate and why they choose to go after the things they go after. Specifically in the congressional hearing, it was 2 hours of Congress, not specifically crypto people, talking about just the SEC in general. They've gotten to the point where even like traditional finance is starting to get very frustrated with the SEC. And one of the things they point to is they're saying that the private investment market is now starting to dwarf the public investment market simply because it's so much easier and more efficient to take companies private and do private investment instead of go public and have to deal with the SEC. One of the things that they harped on continuously was the idea that you need to stop enforcing based on theoretical and hypothetical things that you want to see in the market, as opposed to actually writing rules and trying to regulate based on the actual problems going on in the market. So again, it seems to be a top level strategic play where Gary Gensler is trying to use the SEC to write and finalize rulings to go after the things that they want to kind of like manifest into the world, which almost feels like legislation as opposed to regulation, instead of like the enforcement, which is one of their 3 core duties of pretty much. So yeah, I firmly believe that this is something that might actually require changing leadership to see effectual change going on. Additionally, one of the things that the Congress talked about as well is that there are 5 people that head up the SEC. The chair is just the most notable and outspoken person. They don't control all of the power. However, they do have the majority of it at the top. So there's a high likelihood you're going to start seeing more people from the SEC get dragged in front of Congress. So hopefully it makes for good TV, and also hopefully it actually starts to get some change going. But again, until they change out some leadership, I think we're going to stay on the same path.
Yeah, and as you said, since there are 5 people, they each vote on everything that happens, essentially, right? So it has to be 3-2 for that to pass. And so there's supposed to be some checks and balances there. But as you said, it seems like the head of the SEC always has so much power that everybody else is kind of falling into line, or at least being influential over their opinions. Now, I wonder if people that are in the SEC are starting to get a little weary of Mr. Gensler, getting weary of losing in court so often. It's interesting. Liberal rules means liberal enforcement more often than not. Make it specific, and that can't do as much without getting in trouble. It's true. I mean, every time that a crypto agency has asked for clarification from the SEC and how we need to navigate this, how we can be, within what you consider a viable and legal standpoint, but they're not getting any information from the SEC in return on how they're considered to be doing business legally. So if they're not ruling by legislation, if they're not giving answers on how you can, have your business run under the SEC in agreement, sorry, I'm twisting my words there a little bit, then you're in a really bad place, because you don't know if you should be doing X, Y, or Z because you're not getting any feedback from a government agency. I want to actually say something in one of the articles that we read in regards to this, and it was from Paul Pelletier. He was a former federal prosecutor, and now he's a consultant. He said regulatory agencies require supervision by people who understand the gravity of the matters they are supervising. And it sounds like the supervisors were asleep at the switch here. So he's saying there's so many checks and balances within this process that are going against how they should be, that this is just a bad look for Gary. And look, both sides, both Democrats and Republicans that have brought up disagreement and frustration and how the SEC and how Gary Gensler has gone about their business recently. And so it's very rare for bipartisan people to kind of agree. And in the SEC hearing this past one, right, when they were talking about it, there were people that were still on the other side that, to me, don't even understand what crypto is. And in fact, somebody like Maxine Waters, half the time her comments were talking about something that had nothing to do with crypto, because she had no idea what she was even there for. She was trying to get on her soapbox about other legislation she was trying to get passed, which had nothing to do with the crypto SEC regulation that they were there to talk about. Tell me that's not a problem too.
It's more of a commentary on the state of the American political system, which is that a lot of Congress folks know that getting on CSpan and having the hearings in front of the witnesses is kind of a great time to cut clips. It might not even be relevant to the hearing per hand. Like in the beginning, I believe the I forget the word for it, but it was the Democratic majority leader for this particular committee started talking about the affordability of housing, which was a hearing scheduled for later in the day, but he wanted to use some of that time to be able to touch on a topic that they thought was valuable. So yeah, fair warning for folks out there. If you do tune into congressional hearings, be prepared for some people to definitely go off the script and talk about whatever they want to, and not about what's relevant to what's on the docket.
That sounds like a politician to me, but I mean, yeah. No, the thing
it's
that
less of politician. I think it's more of just kind of like the meta game surrounding it, which is like, hey, this is my time in front of the camera. Let's cut some clips right now. Maybe get like a re-election ad clip going here as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. One thing I want to point out here is that the reason why the SEC is getting in so much trouble, because they've been doing this for a long time now in traditional finance, right? However, the reason they're getting in trouble now is because we have this brand new technology that is completely, you can see, or transparent, completely transparent. You can see everything that's going on. And now that people are realizing, like, or the government is realizing just how dangerous this could be for them, to the game that they've been playing for the past, what is it, like 60, 70 years now, that, well, okay, we might need to start, trying to do something about this. And unfortunately, the SEC is stuck in that position where they have to come down hard as like the police, right? But because they're trying so hard just to get to FUD a little bit here and get people to be like, oh, maybe this is a bad investment. Unfortunately, people have already gotten so angry at the government over the past years that they're like, hey, this is a way out of the government. And so then they leave. And then now that they're attacking, the we fight you phase, unfortunately for them, they just keep running into the same issue of, hey, here's what's going on, and you lose. And for as far as I can tell, the SEC never really lost until crypto came around. Isn't that correct?
Very rarely.
Very rarely. And now it's just a common day experience. But
they
with
were
that,
over 90% win rate before they started to hit these crypto.
It was a high 90% too.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And honestly, I think this might not even be a crypto specific thing, but just a Gary Gensler thing, because just the way he's run the agency has honestly been running into the ground. And you can see it in the win-loss ratio, which is that they had a very, very high win percentage because they pursued things that they knew were worth pursuing and they had the evidence on. And now they're just kind of going after whatever they want, hoping that no one's going to check their work. And well, people are checking their work now.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. Like they are so screwed right now, and it's not going to happen. But I mean, here's the thing now, right? So the SEC, I think, was kind of like the tip of the spear. They've been kind of fighting us for a little bit here, but now there's a lot of like other countries that are starting to fight or push back with this whole crypto thing as well, and they're starting to fight in a different sort of way. Quite frankly, what's going on right now in the world is like this is kind of like a freedom versus what would be the word here? Tyranny, basically.
Let's see. We got one more clip, Zenith. Let's fire that up.
Yes, sir. We got one more clip. This is the other half of this testimony from Mr. Hill. This is specifically in reference to the data tracking that the SEC wants to do. Fun fact, the original proposal for the data tracking program, the cost of it has already ballooned to 5x the original amount. So good government work there. Let's get to it.
Our citizens are also very concerned about privacy and very concerned about their private information. We've seen the Office of Personnel Management have records leak. We've seen the IRS see constituent records leak. We've seen the CFPB collect transaction data on consumers and seen it leak. We've seen FinCEN now collect millions of records for beneficial ownership. And finally, the SEC is proposing to collect every American's brokerage account statement, every trade, every day through their consolidated audit trail. They've tried to work on this for a decade, but they are now planning to roll that out as we speak. FINRA President Robert Cook testified here that even his 80-year-old mother's information will be stored in the CAT, despite absence of any likelihood that an investor like his mom would try to manipulate the stock market. So, Mr. Gulliver, let me...
There you go. That is the CAT. That is the program that they want to use to track every trade made by every person on every brokerage. And like Mr. Hill was pointing out, data breach have become very popular in the government sphere. Additionally, they even brought up earlier in this congressional hearing the fact that Gary Gensler's and the SEC's Twitter got hacked twice, or at least they claim that it did. So again, this is the dominoes falling, in my opinion. This is more people giving a more scrutinous eye to anything the government agents, especially the SEC, are starting to do. And it's that mistrust. And honestly, it's well warranted at this point.
You know that meme that says, hell no. That's what I say to this right here. You absolutely cannot do that. That would be such a disaster to actually have that happen. How would they even like prevent that? Wouldn't they have to like grab our addresses or whatever and then watch us?
Well, that's specifically when it comes to crypto. This is honestly just for all of brokerages. So this includes not only centralized exchanges, like anything that might pop up in the US, but also just traditional finance and investment accounts like Fidelity and stuff. Pretty much, it sounds like a daily report of all actions by all different brokerages. Like the guy was saying, like, why do you need to know his 80-year-old grandma's transactions on the daily? And by the way, the dangerous part of this is that in addition to each, as part of the data that's submitted with this, is that it's possible for social security numbers to be included in this. So there is PII, like personally identifiable information, that is sensitive. And that's the sort of stuff that absolutely can start leading to classifications when it comes to these sensitive materials. So this just creates, it's more vulnerabilities is what it is. It's more points of failure, and it's putting more people in harm's way.
It really is. And this is also, but what they're doing here is they're prepping the system for digital IDs, because that's one of the things they're going to be trying to push. And they wanted to push that out right around 2030, right? That was kind of what I can't remember what they were called, but the World Economic Forum, that was one of their plans, right?
What was the coin that got launched where they were like scanning people's
WorldCoin?
WorldCoin. Oh my god.
Yeah,
they got in trouble just recently for people's privacy.
Good.
I wonder why.
You
know, it's interesting though, but Zenith, it seems that seems like not only an overreach of governmental power, but it also seems like an infringement on our rights. Honestly, it really does. But it also kind of reminds me of something that we're seeing over in the European Union. We saw this week that the European Union passed something in regards to, first, cash transactions. You can't make any cash transactions in the EU. Well, once this goes through, it takes up to 3 years once a bill's passed in the EU to go essentially start to get implemented. But it could be faster if they push it through faster. But essentially, you can't make any cash transactions over $10,000. It's illegal. Will be illegal. Anything over $3,000 cash transactions need to be the government needs to know about them. So anything between $3,000 and $10,000, the government will need to know about. And then anything over $10,000 is illegal. You literally can't transact in over $10,000 in cash. Now, along with this, they talked about cryptocurrencies. In fact, the most part of this bill, which they call it an anti-money laundering legislation. That's what they're calling it. They're saying that every transaction that goes from an exchange to a wallet, so essentially a wallet that's not on an exchange, so a wallet somebody holds, every single one of those transactions needs to be given to the EU. So every single transaction that goes from centralized location, or from a centralized exchange to a wallet. So anytime money is sent off an exchange, they will be notified. Now, as Jay mentioned in the chat, and I mentioned as well, if you look at a blockchain and you're savvy, you can see what every transaction is happening, right? Almost every exchange in the United States now KYCs us. They know your name, your address, your phone number. They know what your wallet you're sending it to, right? So people can find that information if they want to. But this seems like a big overstep. And the reason that we wanted to bring it up was also because there's a lot of FUD around it. People are saying, hey, this means that crypto transactions are going to be illegal in the EU. That's not exactly what they're saying. In fact, Mr. Angry Twinkie had a great video on this exact point this week. So if you want to go watch his video, please do. But what it boils down to is the EU, which is also what the United States government is talking about, the SEC is talking about with all of these transactions, is they want no, I'm not going to try to say that word again. I always mess it up. They don't want any anonymous transactions. Okay. So they want to know everything that you do all the time. And they're going to put in sanctions into place to ensure that you don't have freedom of movement with your money. You don't have freedom of transactions. They want to know everything you buy and everything you do with your money. And guess what? If they don't agree with it, and this EU legislation actually includes freezing of accounts, bank accounts, crypto wallets, etc. So there's a lot that is more overlying, and we can't get into it all. But what were your first thoughts about the Zenith? Is this something that's anti-crypto, or is it really just anti-being able to be an anonymous citizen?
It's more of honestly being against being an anonymous citizen. I think crypto is just the best way to be an anonymous citizen, aka that's why it's definitely coming in the crossfire on this one. I think Bradley was giving me some flack, and oh man, I maybe deserve it, because he said my interpretations on behalf of the government agencies was a bit generous, and I might continue to do the same thing here. So effectively, nation states and governments have a duty to protect their citizens. One of the ways they do that against outside nefarious actors is that they try to cut off people at the knees with their funding sources through effectively forensic accounting. That's how you do it in the 21st century, is you track the money and you cut off the money where you can. One of the ways that you track money is you have to have your in points and your out points, which also has the customer information and literally the person at the end getting the briefcase of cash or whatever the final product is that they paid for. Specifically, crypto is a way to get around this. Theoretically, yeah, if you know wallet addresses and you can physically tie them to individuals, that's one way to do it. But overall, the blockchain does not do a very good job of tracking and tagging every transaction about your information regarding it. So when it comes to the governmental stance of this is large amounts of money be able to be moved very well, very efficiently over long distances to anybody from anywhere by anyone. It's that wide ability that honestly breaks the forensic accounting that they've had a monopoly on for a while. So I'm not surprised by this. It's kind of odd, in my opinion, how there's always that magic $10,000 number wherever you go. It's like, try moving $10,000 across any international border. You will probably see some sort of holding cell for at least a little bit. But yeah, it's just, crypto is a way to move money that we've never seen before. And I think it honestly scares the hell out of a lot of people, specifically governments.
Yeah, that's the thing that our friends at the GoFundMe channel, or Go Fud Yourself channel, they were actually talking about that in the crypto arms race that they have. I think it's like every Thursday, where they talk about kind of like what's going on in the world. And one of the things that is consistently repeated whenever they're talking about this is you can't, like, one country will make up rules about how you can or cannot transact with cryptos, but they keep running into the issue of, but if you're, like, say, sending it internationally, right, somewhere else, maybe that country, you know, has some different laws. And you can't, it's really hard to make a world law when every single country wants to do something different. And even with the powers of you know, the Western world, I mean, we could get like the larger ones, you know, the majority of Europe, right? United States. I mean, you could get all these countries kind of together to sort of do the same thing. But then you've still got all these other countries, like the whole eastern side of the earth, right? With Asia and all that. So it's a slippery slope when they start trying to make rules on how to control crypto, because you could just move if you wanted to. That's the truth. You could just move to a different country that'll treat you better. And I think over the years, these coming years, as countries are trying to clamp down on regulations, I think we're going to start seeing people moving out. And we had a really good kind of early sign of that just within our own country here of the United States of America with California, because they started clamping down on some really crazy stuff, and just about the record amount of businesses and people moved out, hilariously enough, to Minnesota, where I'm at. I run into Californians all the time, but yeah, and then like Texas and Florida. So yeah, something big is about to happen here, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I'm not going to lie.
You know, it's also interesting because I was thinking all week since this information came out about the EU. First of all, Germany, the delegate from Germany was very heavily against the passing of this legislature, as were a few other delegates within the EU. So this wasn't just a hey, we all agree with it. There were some people that had some very strong words against it. So that's good to see. But it also made me think of England, sort of the hashtag Brexit that happened not long ago. That's why they left, because it's like, hey, we don't feel like the EU has our best interest in hand, and we want to be able to make rules for ourselves. And so, we are leaving. I wonder, as the EU tries to take more and more control away from the individual countries, will more other countries start to leave the European Union? Now, they do get some benefits from being a part of it, right, from an economic standpoint. But I'm curious to see if we'll start to see more movement away from or against the EU, similar to how England and the UK did it. And conversely, we just talked about not that long ago, the new legislation that England brought up in regards to crypto. They want crypto to be considered property, to be considered your own property. So they're talking about passing new legislation that would make crypto a third type of property. So that would come with its own benefits for people in the UK. Now, what do you guys think? Is it possible that the EU gets more backlash from overstepping?
100%. You can already see this in I'm forgetting the African country. I think it was Nigeria, if I'm remembering properly. But they came out with the CBDC right away, and it's the least most used thing there. There's riots in the street and everything. So I'm pretty sure it's not going to be that bad. But I can tell you what, people have a tendency to be like, oh, that doesn't sound good. And then a law is passed, and it's like a year or two in having to live with that law, and then people start realizing just what the law does for their daily life, and then they start getting pissed.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not saying anything's going to happen in the EU. This is just a consideration, right? We've already seen it with England, and with some of the backlash that we've heard from some of the other delegates, it is very interesting. But essentially, the law passed, and I brought it up right after us talking about the SEC, because I think I see some correlations with what the SEC is trying to do with following every single transaction with what the EU is going to do. Now, the one thing that the EU did not say anywhere that I've read, and I looked pretty deeply, I did not read all 329 pages of their anti-money laundering act. Okay, I don't have time to read 229 pages, but I read a lot of information. I did read their direct website, and I haven't seen anything against unknown wallet to unknown wallet transactions. So, of course, how are you going to track that? All they can do is track centralized exchanges. So if you already have money in a wallet, they're not going to be able to track that. So get your money off these exchanges and into your own damn wallets before this legislation goes through. My EU friends, please custody your own coins, or you're going to be in a heap of shape, which a lot of people have. FTX, Voyager, you go down the line. If you're not custodying your own coins, you always have the ability to lose. So custody your coins, be safe, be self-sovereign, be self-sufficient, and don't allow nobody to take what's yours. Okay?
To be fair, well said, Brendan. To be fair, they can always go back in history and check out, oh, you took it off the exchange at this time, that time, right? Which is kind of sad. And what you could technically do is send it over to like something, say, Tornado Cash, and then start a new wallet and send it to your new wallet from there. That would probably be the greatest way you could possibly get out of people knowing which wallets. But I can tell you right now that as soon as they start implementing this and they start labeling your social security with your wallet, as soon as a wallet pops up that doesn't have your social security connected, that's gonna be a target right away, and they're gonna really start watching you.
Yeah, and Tornado Cash is already going to be illegal for the EU, so it's like they're not going to let you do that in the first place. And in fact, they said it's illegal for the United States people to use Tornado Cash. So VPNs are a beautiful thing.
Hey,
I'm not saying do anything legal. I'm just saying VPNs are a beautiful thing so people can't follow what I'm doing all the time. That's all. Anything to add on this topic, Zenith?
Nope. It's a darn shame that mixers like Zcash and Tornado Cash are very frowned upon and despised by governmental agencies, because honestly, privacy is a key tenet of capitalism to an extent. You got to be able to operate privately and to negotiate with people behind closed doors, because if everything is out in the open, then it means that there's effectively no competitive advantage because everyone sees every move going on. But yeah, that's a topic for another time. I think we're ready to hit some community chats. What do you think?
Let's do it. We might even have a super chat.
Ooh.
Farmer Brown, baby, how's that tent? I heard that dirt's worth a lot of money. All those coins you're squirreling away under that tent.
Yeah, he brought it over to my house. He brought it over to my house and just sat right there. I'm like, what are you doing here, man? Get it out of here. Go back to your highway.
Mind of Tron, overreaching like crazy. Ain't that an understatement? And by the way, the Tron ride at Disney is pretty fun. The original Tron movie is better than the remake. Fight me on it.
Yeah. Shout out to Mind of Tron as well. I believe he's from the Crypto Black Sheep community. So super stoked to have you hanging out in our chats as well again. We have loved all of our crossover episodes with Crypto Black Sheep and Donnie, the developer. Always a good time to talk to the developers.
Fantastic stuff. Yeah. Yeah, Jay, I mean, it's true. You know, think about this. Every time we have legislation, every time we have a court case, if it goes to the Supreme Court, that becomes precedence. The higher it goes in the courts, the more precedence that it creates. So if Coinbase goes to the Supreme Court and wins, that's much better for the crypto community because it sets a new precedence. Every one of these cases that the SEC is taking and losing, and maybe it's why we might not see any more or many more the SEC wanting to bring it to second and third level judges, or by golly, the Supreme Court, is because maybe, just maybe, they're afraid of these favorable outcomes and afraid of the precedents that this will set. Yeah, really good point, Jay. I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of people in the government that have been in the government for a long time. I mean, if you add all of the ages of the oldest people that have been in the government for the longest time, it is unbelievable. I think we need some new blood, but I don't think we need new blood just for new blood. I think we need people that are actually want to come in and make smart changes, to listen to what the people want and not try to push their own agendas. So.
Absolutely. There's definitely a critique to be made that there's been a failure to transfer power and create new leaders. However, at the same time, Brennan, you nailed it, which is don't just put young blood in there for the sake of fixing a stat. You got to be able to actually like transfer those values and ideas and the strategy behind it.
There's a few young people in Congress that I can point to that seem to just be a stat without having anything between the ears. I'm not going to mention any names. What's the next degen play on Pulse Chain? Well, there's a lot of degen plays on Pulse Chain. I happen to be a big fan of this movie called Monsters, Inc. I won't say it's new per se, but I think that it has some big opportunities. I think Teddy Bear on the pullback could be another, if you haven't gotten into it, could be a possibility to get into. And a lot of people like PDI. There's a big PDI community. I think that's a strong community that you think could be good. Another one that I actually like, I really like HOA. Those guys in the Tang Gang, they're crazy. They're just like on the pullback. I think it's pulled back from. I think it's been almost like a 5 or 6x pullback on that coin, which means it could be a good time to get in if you haven't. Now, none of these are financial advice, but just some interesting coins in the Pulse Chain universe. There are some coins that I like that aren't in the Pulse Chain universe when it comes to memes, but honestly, I'm not in them because most of my meme coins are in Pulse Chain. It's just cheaper, easier. Generally speaking, less rugs than a place like Solana. And Ethereum's just too expensive to play unless you're a whale. So maybe I'll set a limit order for meme play on Ethereum here and there. But I don't know. I think there's some fun meme coins, and there's more.
I'll tell you the meme coin. Right? You ready for this one? The new meme coin is going to be Nate Wick. That's the new meme coin. It's going to the moon, baby.
I like it.
Just to cover some of the stats that you brought up here, the HOA coin, it did top out at about 7.2 to 7.3 cents, and it's currently sitting at about 2.8 cents. And I got to say, if you are in Pulse Chain or Hex because you think this is an excellent grassroots grown community, The 10 gang has their own entire subculture going on, and those guys
Crazy.
are absolutely rabid about just building community and building something cool and having their own shtick. So hats off to those guys. And then also, if you're really looking for a Degen play or you are looking for some good alpha, go check out the Wednesday episode. We had Whiskey Wednesday with Crypto Black Sheep and Donnie. They even brought on one of the guys from their community, STP, although we nicknamed him the Professor because the guy is an absolute wizard. He is self-taught, pure TA, like genius, built his own indicators, and he even dropped a few of the plays that he's looking for as well. If you want more information on that outside of the episode, then go check out the Crypto Black Sheep Telegram. They have a lot of alpha in there as well.
Yeah, one of the plays that I thought was hilarious, and I may or may not have bought into, was PWBTC. And I'm like, bro, that's a meme coin. He's like, it's not a meme coin. Look at the possibility on this chart. He pulls up the chart. I'm like, bro, it's still a meme coin. But nonetheless, I loved his vigor. Really smart. We'll definitely have him on probably for a full show sometime. But yeah, PWBTC. So think about that. Wrapped Bitcoin that was on Ethereum that got copied over to Pulse Chain. So it's the Pulse version of WBTC, not the one, not if someone actually bridged over WBTC. So PWBTC.
If you want to be a real Degen, though, go over to Goat Protocol and buy a scratcher for the lottery for PDI they have.
Yeah.
Is that enough Degen play?
All right. Enough. We're just the Degen Roundtable trying to give good information. Don't fumble your bags, all right? Who else we got up in here? Fast Abdul's here? Let's take over Canada. Last time I checked, Asia and the Middle East were trying to take over Canada. So my family's from Canada. So my best friends are from Canada. If we're going to build a wall anywhere, let's build it right there. Crypto Black Sheep. Thank you for the love, brother. We appreciate you guys, your community. Just been so many great communities that have given us so much love since we've started, and really appreciate you guys, all the love that you've given to us, and can't wait to do more work together.
Absolutely. Shout out to the super chat for $4.20. Also notably, the guy streams every day Pacific Standard Time at 4:20. So might be a bit of a running theme.
Yes, might be. You know what? I can't confirm nor deny. Cannot confirm nor deny, but might be. Welcome. Welcome. Thank you, everybody. We got a lot more information, man. This Richard Hart stuff is so interesting to me because it kind of ties into everything else that we have talked about in regards to the SEC, in regards to the overstepping of their jurisdictions and what they're trying to do to the crypto community as a whole. They're trying to take crypto community and they're trying to shove it into a little box that is called a security. Now, this security is a little box because only specific things are allowed to fit in it, okay? They, unfortunately, want to take everything that's not supposed to be in the box and shove it into this tiny little box. And fortunately, a lot of people have made a lot of money in crypto. And they want to fight the SEC because they're corrupt. That's the thought, that the SEC is corrupt. You have to make your own decision. I happen to think there's a lot of corruption within the government, especially within the SEC. And I don't think that they have our best interests at hand most of the time. In fact, I think they only have their own interests at hand, whatever that case may be. There's always more behind the scenes than what we're seeing in the beginning. Now, XRP, the SEC has a few other cases going on right now, right? Coinbase, we mentioned earlier. They have a case against this man, this nice, humble human being called Richard Hart. He has a big heart and he wants to help everybody. That's what I'm told. And they're going on this witch hunt against poor Mr. Richard Hart. Now, the question is, what is the next step? What's going to happen in the Richard Hart case? And is there some precedent set in this SEC case against Deadbox that might help Richard Hart? That's a question. So I want to ask you guys before I get into some tweets. Richard Hart's been tweeting a lot one of the things that I didn't expect was for him to tweet much until the SEC case was over, because he was very quiet when it first happened. It's very interesting to me that he went a completely 180. Not only has Richard Hart started tweeting a lot, but whoever owns the SAC wallet for Pulse Chain and PulseX, well, they've been putting some money into the Pulse Chain market. Maybe that's Richard Hart, maybe it's not. I don't know. I don't know who's clicking the sell button or the buy button, because it's anonymous. I don't know who's behind that computer. But a lot of people say it might be Richard Hart. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But nonetheless, it's interesting that he's been tweeting a lot. His case isn't set. Nope. In fact, he's going to be filing a motion here in the near future. In fact, his lawyers have until April 8th to put a motion into the court. Question, do you know what that motion is going to be, Zenith?
That is going to be a motion to dismiss. Effectively, what they're doing is they're trying to wrap up everything with a nice little bow, submit it to the judge, and say this is not even worth your time. And I mean, we're probably not going to get a win so big that the SEC gets sanctioned. It is possible, but probably not realistic. The best case scenario here, honestly, would just be that they file the motion to dismiss. The SEC comes back with their arguments, and they hit them back with their counter arguments, and then the judge looks at all of it and says, yep, this is nothing. Get it out of here.
Now, a lot of people have been saying, oh, April 8th, okay, he's gonna go in, it's gonna be dismissed. It's not how the court works. I've read through the court documents. I have alerts set up, okay? So every time something happens in that case, I get a little alert into my email telling me what is going on. So if you want, you can go and log into the docket, and you can ask for updates in regards to that case. So that is interesting. Now, I want to give a little shout out. In fact, I might share my screen for a second to, just because it's easier sometimes when things are on Twitter for me to share versus, let's see. Let me know when that is up. Now you can see it. Perfect. So shout out to Skywalker, Pulsekin SW at Pulsekin SW on X. I want everyone to know that these are the dates that have to take place before we can move on. So first, Richard Hart and his lawyers are going to motion to dismiss the case. They have to do that by April 8th. Now, it will probably be as close to April 8th as possible. And then the SEC has 3 months to read through that, to formulate a response, and to send that response to the judge. August 22nd, for Richard Hart to then reply to the reply of the SEC, right? So they're going to then give their response. And then there's an oral argument before the court on the motion to dismiss. So this is very interesting to me. We already knew that he was going to motion to dismiss, but I think it's important for people to understand these dates. Now, before I throw this to Zenith and Nate and the rest of the potential panel, which is nobody, I want to show you a little tweet that Richard Hart made on March 11th. March 11th. Now, remember those dates that I just showed you? This is saying, hey, a 25X looks cool. Another beautiful day in the neighborhood. Now, of course, not financial advice. Past performance is no guarantee of future. But look at this. Look at this. This is wrapped pulse to die. Now, what he's taking is just a couple lines from the low here, which was 4 zeros and a 275, I believe, or 257. I'd have to look that up again, but I know it's 4 zeros and a 257 or 275. Now, if you took a calculator, if you took your calculator out, you said, okay, what is a 25X of that? Well, let's take a look at this secondary line that he's drawn here, all the way up to 3 zeros, between 3 zeros and a 5, and 3 zeros and a 6.5. Now, if this is September, what date would be right about here, where that potential 25x from the bottom might come into play. Zenith, Nate, any thoughts about what that date might be? October? October? Does that sound familiar? Does October sound familiar to anybody?
There might be an October on the cards there. Perhaps October 24th.
Huh. Interesting. In October, it's an oral argument before the court on a motion to dismiss. Is it coincidence that Richard Hart draws this chart at a 25x around the same time that they're going to be putting their oral arguments in for this case to be dismissed? Now, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. I do have a few more things that I want to share, but at the moment, I want to get you guys feedback. So first, I mentioned that I didn't expect him to tweet at all until the case was done, was locked up. The judge put something out. Well, I was wrong about that. Now, he waited quite a while to put any tweets or videos out, but he has been tweeting like a madman recently about a lot of things. Pulse, ETH, DAI, PDAI, EDAI. Shout out to people that might mess up the difference between EDI and PDAI. Kind of funny. We've all done that in the beginning. But nonetheless, he's been tweeting a lot. And now we're talking about October potential of oral arguments for dismissal of his case, and an interesting tweet that he put out about maybe how cool a 25x would be. That might also be in October. Am I tinfoil hat
really
here?
Scary about this is,
or am I onto something?
Yeah, I think you have been. This is kind of what I've been saying, right? So originally, what I was saying is that we were going to dump really hard, and then Richard was going to pump, right? Not necessarily like a huge pump, but then he was going to pump it to try and advertise, right? So I think that we'll have some pumps here and there, and it's going to be really obvious when all the days are red. Kind of like a ladder system all the way up to that 25x, right? But here is the thing that I was also saying. I was saying right around November, which it just happens to be the end of October, by the way. So right around November into April of 2025, I'm going to be looking to take profits because I think that's when things are really going to take off. Not just Richard Hart coins, but just about everything. It's kind of scary how things just happen to line up that way, isn't it?
Now, look, we're just making some economic commentary here. We don't know what's going to happen. Nobody knows what's going to happen. If you did, you'd be rich, right? Everyone would be rich if everyone knew what was going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen. These are just some comments and some interesting facts. In fact, this was something that I was talking with Jeff about extensively. He was one of the first people to bring this up to me. And well, maybe we did some math behind the scenes. 25x from the lows. I don't know about you guys, but I was still buying when the FUD was the worst. In fact, Sami said something that was quite interesting. When did Pulse Chain hit its lowest? When OKX delisted them. Interesting. Bottom signal. There's oftentimes signals that can tell you if it's the bottom or top. Euphoria, the biggest FUD in the market. But Zenith, what do you think about this? Does Richard Hart think his case is locked up? Does he think it's a guarantee it's going to get dismissed?
I will admit, this is a little bit of trying to read the crystal ball, but at the same time, it's very clear that Richard Hart has a very good grasp on kind of like the metagame around most situations. Like, he seems like a person that is aware of not just what is being said, but how it comes off and like the intent of how you can put things. You can definitely see it when he did his whole outrage marketing campaign. And at the same time, his whole focus is tried to scam you into using delayed gratification and self-betterment and self-improvement tactics. He's trying to use scam tactics to help make people better people. So when you look at it that standpoint, yes, it makes complete sense. So the conventional wisdom here is that, cool, you've now been indicted by the SEC. Shut the hell up, get a lawyer, don't say anything, go through your lawyer. So by that logic, then that means that Richard Hart should not be tweeting. I mean, he has not been streaming, but he has been tweeting. So one of the interpretations I've gotten off of this is that we're still seeing a bit of the 4D chess, so to speak, which is that things are calculated. Things are very much not off the cuff, aka streaming, but very manufactured and pre-recorded, or it is a calculated approach. which means that because he's actually out there saying things, I think that the sentiment in the community that something is afoot makes sense. And it also seems like a good signal as confidence for the upcoming case with the SEC. Because I guarantee you the SEC will try to bring up everything and anything they possibly can, including social media posts. So yeah, the emergence of Richard Hart, especially with the aggressiveness of some of the tweets, as we saw, was it 2 weeks ago or last week with the great Hex debacle, he's not afraid to kind of stir the pot right now, which in my mind, yeah, that does lend credence to the idea that he feels that this case is very much locked up or that everything is falling into place and he's just playing a game.
What do you think, Nate?
So what I think is that Richard knows that the best advertisement is going to be the big green bubbles on Rand's show when everything else is red. I know that he's thinking that, so that's marketing. But then historically, we usually have a huge dump in the alts, right? Right around this, it's going to be this time, like May, June, on the others chart and all that, right? So that seems to be lining up pretty decently, especially if we get something like a Fed pivot right around that time, which happens to also line up. And then I know that Richard Hart is going to want the ability to be able to say, hey, we're pumping harder than everything else. Since a lot of altcoins as of right now have kind of had their pump, they've had the warm-up season pump, there's not going to be as many X's in a moonshot, which almost feels like possibly there's been a little bit of manipulating, kind of like how Bitcoin did, right? Where the RH ecosystem may have been getting held down for a couple of reasons. Number one, to shake out any non-believers, and the non-believers in Richard Hart's case would be like, hey, we can just get rid of these guys who are just going to sell anyways and have them buy when everything starts pumping again to help pump the system even more. But then also to make sure that when you do go to pump, right, during that time when everything else is flying up, you fly harder. You're a faster horse. So, and that there's going to be a lot of people who are going to want to come over to Pulse Chain because of that. So what I think we need to do is we need to bang on the drum of Pulse Chain is the place to come build projects. It's one of the best places you can go. Get as many creators over here as possible. And then when that pumping really, really, really takes off, then everybody is just going to be in complete euphoria. And yeah, I think that's the direction we need to go.
Yeah. It's not a bad point. And you said something in regards to shaking out the weak hands. I'm seeing a lot of people, even within the community, people that have been pretty outspoken for Pulse Chain, kind of starting to feel like they're left behind with all these big green candles in other ecosystems and a lot of meme coins in Solana, in Phantom. You know, there's been a lot of green coins and a lot of other ecosystems that they feel like they could have bought. And I think that I'm seeing a little bit of that worry. And when is the best time to buy? When the FUD is the most, right? Zenith said earlier, not financial advice. Seems like prices are at a good entry point, especially if your bags are on the smaller side of Pulse Chain. You could nibble there or you could put in a large amount. I know personally, I may or may not have purchased some more Richard Hart coins over the past week. I like dips. When it dips, if I have cash, I'm going to buy. Now, I happen to have sold some profits in other coins. And so I had some money on the sidelines, and then we got a dip. Wow, it's funny how the 60-day cycle and the halvening and the 4-year cycle all seem to be playing out to a T. Now, that doesn't mean that it will continue to play out in the way that we expect it. But if the 4-year cycle continues to play out exactly the same as other 4-year cycles, holy moly, Bitcoin's going to look really good next year. Really good. Now, we're also getting a Bitcoin squeeze, right? People aren't wanting to sell Bitcoin. A lot of institutions are getting into Bitcoin. I'm going to pause my thought here because we're going to go into this topic next. Nate, what are you going to say?
So actually, I wanted to just kind of add on a little bit so it's a little more clear for people. When you're talking about the people who have been shaken out, right? The reason why it's important to shake out weak hands is because these people are feeling like they're left behind, okay? They're feeling like they're left behind and chasing meme coins outside of the ecosystem, right? Now, if they're chasing meme coins outside the ecosystem or even in the ecosystem, right? If they're chasing green candles, what do you think they're going to do for our main core coins when we start going up? They're going to jump right back in. Now, I know people don't want to hear this, but it's the truth, and you need to understand it. You buy at the bottom before people get in, so that way people can buy your bags and then you sell on their head. That is a real thing, okay? So what you want to do is you want to get these people who have no faith in anything and are very emotional. You want them out of your ecosystem. However, you also want your ecosystem to pump. And so if you shake them out that way and they think they can get rich quick as soon as the green candles start going off, well, they're going to be coming in, and because you held that conviction, you're going to be dumping on their heads. And when they come back and say, oh, you're terrible for dumping on my head, you're able to look at them and say, hey, I was the one who had convictions. I was the one who was strong. You decided to run off and go do something else, regardless of everybody around you saying, don't do it, just hold, just hold. Well, I'm sorry, buddy, but you get what you deserve.
As those green candles happen, the more non-believers that sold means there's less resistance on the way up. That's the bottom line. So much easier to make the market go up if people aren't going to continue to sell. So why not make them sell at their point of biggest fear?
Exactly. And get into our Telegram, because we are here to help you. I can almost guarantee you that everybody who's in there is basically just going to make it. Whether that means rich or not or retired, that's not the point. You're still going to make it in this cycle. Even if you didn't make huge gains, you're still going to come back and be like, yeah, I probably would have lost it all. Instead, I actually made some gains. So I'm in the green. Get in our Telegram, guys. Come on. What are you doing?
And please also, while we're on the topic, please like and subscribe. We are really, really trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. So if you haven't yet, please subscribe to our channel. Hit that like button. There's a little QR code here for the Degen Roundtable Telegram. And yeah, so please join that. See anything you want to add before we move on to the next topic?
Not really. We hit 1,000 subs. I'll probably be popping champagne bottles in my driveway on stream, but we'll see.
I happen to have a bottle of Vouv ready to go. Also, I don't know if you know this. I can open a champagne bottle with a knife.
Excellent party trick. One of my favorites as well.
So maybe we'll do that on stream. If maybe we'll even teach you how to do it.
Ooh, can we do that? That'd be awesome. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, it's
That'd be really cool.
Very fun. But till we hit 1,000 subs, I can't even talk about it. So got 60 more to go. Smash that like. Okay, so Richard Hart seems like he has a really good case, or he thinks that he has a chance to win this case very easily. And I think that's why has zero fear. I'm curious if this is a segue into the next topic. I'm curious if his lawyers are reading his tweets before he tweets them. Hey, read this before I actually put this out. In fact, it doesn't seem like it. Not the type of guy to do that. He knows the law system seemingly better than most lawyers, and he in fact tweeted out today, I believe, a recommendation to Coinbase and Ethereum lawyers in ways to ensure that they're getting proper coverage against the SEC to make precedent and to keep getting W's for the crypto communities. Now, Bitcoin goes up, everything else goes up. Yeah, generally speaking, if it's a good project, yes. So we've had a lot of institutional money come into Bitcoin. How could we have more come in? Is that even possible? Well, I'm here to tell you that it is a possibility. It's a big possibility because the squeeze on Bitcoin is getting real. And it's getting to the point where people are realizing, companies, countries, billionaires, that they might not want to lose out on an opportunity to have the best store of value, the best store of wealth that's ever been created. Right? Now, yeah, gold was created by somebody, maybe the Lord, but it wasn't created by a human being. It was always there. Bitcoin was created by somebody, and it seems to be taking off in ways that we never could have imagined 10 and 12 years ago. So we have BlackRock, we have Grayscale, we have MicroStrategy, we have Fidelity, we have El Salvador, we have a lot of big players that have already hopped in to the Bitcoin cycle. But there are a lot that haven't even dipped their toe into it yet. So we have another article that talks about the largest pension fund in the world out of Japan. So Japan's government pension investment fund, they're the largest pension fund in the world, is looking into Bitcoin as a tool for diversification. The largest pension fund in the world. Now, on top of that, we're starting to get billionaires. We already know that billionaires like Ricardo Salinas, Mexico, the Emir of Qatar, he said he's going to be buying for the country's sovereign wealth fund. Jeff Bezos. There's a lot of people that are talking about getting into Bitcoin because they're seeing a ship that they cannot miss. If they miss this cycle, they might never be able to get on it in the same way that they can now. Now, I'm not saying that Bitcoin doesn't go up to 200,000 and crash back down to 50. Sure, that's a possibility. But it seems like these people aren't willing to take a chance at missing this. Okay? So, Japan, biggest pension fund, billionaires. Is this big news or is this just status quo?
This is another grain of rice in the pile. It is another snowflake in the avalanche, so to speak.
Wait, hold on, time out. Did you say grain of rice because we're talking about Japan? That's racist.
My face palm you, bro.
But the point is this: the Japanese pension fund here is about $1.7 trillion. If you even just allocate 1% of that, that means that we're looking at about $17 billion. $17 billion is enough to buy you more Bitcoin than I think Michael Saylor holds right now, which is about 240,000 Bitcoin, if my math is correct. So this is the potential to move the market in a little bit of its own. Previously, there have been people that have tried to move the market independently. Like back in the day, Tesla and Elon Musk were doing an experiment. I think he bought like $100 million worth of Bitcoin and moved the market like 1 or 2%. So the market is massive and deep. However, at the same time, if we've seen anything with the massive ETF rollout and the buy up of a lot of the Bitcoin supply by the ETF folks trying to play catch up, is that it can absolutely move the price beyond the norm. I mean, that's why we're sitting at all-time highs right now, or a week ago, effectively. And this is just another player getting into the market, and it's more conventional money realizing that there's at least a reason to be slightly diversified or have some exposure to this market. By the way, we have a super chat from Brother64, Canadian $5. He says, fire. Hopefully it means that we're doing well and killing it. Shout out to you, my man. Hope you and your brother are doing well up there in the Great White North. Back to Japan. It's more financial players is always going to be better, especially if you're just looking for price appreciation. This market is only going to get deeper, and as a result of it getting deeper, it means that we're also going to see more stability. And to be honest, that's something that these players are craving and want, which is why they only have such little exposure to Bitcoin, or while they're never going to have that much more until it starts to really level off. So in that sense, having these large institutions, or almost like nation states, effectively, is going to price appreciate, it's going to provide stability, and then it's also going to create mass adoption, because it's just another little data point in your brain. It's the thing that says, hey, people in Japan are investing in this. People all over the world are investing in this. It's like, are you investing in this? It makes sense. And we even saw that, you guys are going to have to correct me. I never forget who it is or the guy's name, but we recently had a CEO lose his job because he refused to invest in Bitcoin for the ETFs and got fired as a result of it.
Yeah, that was the Vanguard CEO. Go ahead, Nate.
I find it interesting that the institutional FOMO is real. We always make fun of emotional investors FOMOing into green candles. What do you think Japan is doing right here? Right? This is quite literally them just like, oh, everybody else is doing and it keeps going up. I need to buy now. The other thing, though, too, is if you're looking at it, right, 225 trillion Japanese yen is worth like $1.25 trillion. So there's kind of a discrepancy there. Have you noticed how just about every single country that has currency issues, fiat issues, tends to go the direction of Bitcoin? I think that I think that unfortunately Japan has been kind of careful about what they're doing over there, simply because they are part of the Western world and they're so closely tied to the United States, right? However, at this point, I think they're thinking to themselves, all right, maybe what we should be doing is at least getting some sort of store of value, what we would consider as a store of value. And so that's when you start getting these large institutions over there in Japan being like, hey guys, just under the rug, it's no big deal, but I think we're going to buy a little bit of Bitcoin, just a little bit, then they throw a couple $1 trillion into it. But yeah, dude, what we have not realized yet as of right now in the market is the Asian markets. They have not really been buying in, especially China. China, other than the United States of America, China is the second biggest marketplace, and they haven't really been doing too much at all. So when they talk about, the 200, Richard Hart, 224 Bitcoin, right? 1,000 Bitcoin, that's like, all right, that is extremely possible because as of right now, just with our own institutional money from the ETFs, we've already hit over, before the halvening, over our the all-time high. Okay, so what happens when the second largest market in the world pops online, all of a sudden starts doing the same thing? Right now, they're just watching Hong Kong very closely. China is, and as soon as China realizes that there's a good effect with the way that the markets are with Hong Kong, they're going to start implementing that into those regulations into their own country and start buying things up. Specifically Bitcoin, more than likely. They're kind of iffy over there, but yeah, that's just there's a lot more runway to go.
Yeah, and that's interesting. That's what I want to tell people. And there's another side of the Bitcoin. I think that some of these countries and some of these companies are also thinking of Bitcoin as what? A hedge against inflation, a hedge against economic uncertainty. At some point, I think Bitcoin may decorrelate from the standard markets. Now, we haven't seen that happen yet, but I think that it's certainly a possibility as people use it more and more as a store of value and more as a hedge against economic uncertainty. We're starting to see a lot of that. Japan doesn't want to be left behind. Japan used to be the second largest economy. Now the third largest economy. Last year they were number 4, actually. They haven't changed. Their GDP hasn't gone up. Germany's GDP has gone down. So Germany has actually been in a bit of a fall. But Japan, they don't want to lose it. I feel like they want to stay in that sort of second or third spot. And Bitcoin for them, obviously they've always embraced technology. And I think that this could be really big for us. And again, as billionaires start to diversify some of their money into Bitcoin as well, I think that is huge, at least from a standpoint of, hey, will this cycle be a super cycle? If you're not sure, if you haven't watched our episode on the perfect storm theory, go back and watch it. We have 2, the first one and the second one. The second one was recent, just about, a month ago. And we talked about how things are certainly starting to fall into place. The puzzle pieces are starting to kind of show themselves a little bit to the point where this could be a cycle, unlike any cycle that we've seen previously. That could be for Bitcoin. But if it is for Bitcoin, that means it's going to be for every other coin as well. As the Ethereum ETF happens, now maybe it happens in May. Maybe the SEC says no and takes them to court, which it kind of sounds like they're gearing up to do. So maybe it gets pushed off to September or October. I don't know. But I think the ETF is a matter of when, not if. And many people have said that. So we're starting to see more and more momentum being pushed towards Bitcoin, which is again going to make all waters rise as it goes up. Look, we're almost at 3 trillion market cap right now. That was the top of the last bull market, 3 trillion. So where could we get to the next? If we really hit a really big top this cycle, you're going to have to go back to our perfect storm theory and find out, because we threw some numbers out there for you. I'm not going to give it out. I'm not giving it up. Zenith, what do you think about this?
It's more data, and it's all going in the same direction. When it comes to the Ethereum ETFs, I think you're correct. It's one of the things I like to point out, which is that it took humans about 10,000 years to invent flying, but then it only took us about 70 to go to the moon. which is that once the first thing comes out, the dam is broken and the rest of the water's coming. So Bitcoin ETF came out. It means that people are already asking about the next thing. They're asking about Ethereum ETFs, or even like a Solana ETF, or ideas that I've heard bounced around is like a possibility of just like a bundle layer 1 ETF, which is just a lot of like maybe the top 10 coins all together in a singular crypto ETF. And then even inside of the crypto sphere, people are bouncing the ideas off each other of like, can we create tokens that are effectively just bundles and our own versions of ETFs? So it's like there's momentum behind this idea. Labeling this cycle as the ETF cycle makes perfect sense in my mind, and I see more of it coming. Again, we have May, late May. I want to say it's the 24th or the 28th circled right now as one of the deadlines for the Ethereum ETFs. And if my memory serves me correct, it was either this week or last week, 24th. Thank you. It was either this week or last week where the SEC actually pushed back another ETH ETF application to right around the end of May. I mean, I'm not going to get too superstitious with this, but that's a lot of data points lining up, and they might do a similar rollout to the Bitcoin ETF with the Ethereum ETF, and just do like a batch approval of like 10 or 12.
Well, that's what they did with the Bitcoin, right? Like, it's kind of weird because apparently I've gotten some flack for saying this, but what they're doing with the Ethereum ETF is the same exact thing that they did with the Bitcoin ETF. You know, they just kind of build it up in the background. The number just goes up until, you know, they announce that it's been approved, and then massive dump, right? And then it slowly starts building up again to the point where you hit, you don't realize you've hit it, but like 3 or 4, what was the exact number? Actually, it was 4 to 5 months down the road. All of a sudden you're hitting all-time highs and you're like, whoa, how did we get there so fast? And it's like, well, those ETFs have been doing this over and over. And I mean, how much Bitcoin have they actually like transacted? It's like in the trillions of dollars, isn't it? Or it's like billions every single day. I know that. There's a lot of money flying around. So yeah, these ETFs are big deals, and I've been saying since literally what was it, like November? I think it was December of 2022. What they're gonna do is a spot Bitcoin ETF, and then a spot Ethereum ETF, and then possibly something like a Solana ETF, and then we're gonna start moving into like index funds, mutual funds types of things, where they're just gonna get a whole bunch of them together, like the top 10, and start stuffing them together, and it's gonna be like, oh, you can invest in crypto this way. Like, that's how it's going to go. So just prepare.
Well, you know what I'd love to see? If Ethereum gets an ETF, I think that everything that is a fork of the Ethereum blockchain should also be applied for an ETF. Now, that would take some listing on some centralized exchanges, I think, for that to happen. I don't know if that's always a good thing, right? I kind of like that Pulse Chain and PulseX and Hex are decentralized, are sort of like away from the government and the billion and trillion dollar hedge funds grasps personally. But anything that's good for ETH is good for Pulse Chain, because you can do everything on Pulse Chain less expensive and faster with better throughput than you can do on ETH. And so if ETH fees, gas fees start to rise up, I mean, look, they're already high, but as they continue to gain, that's only going to push more people to want to transact on Pulse Chain, in my opinion. So pump my bags, please. All right, we have about 20 minutes. I think we're going to quickly run this real quick, Zenith. Let's get just a 10, 15-minute talk on something that happened this week in regard to the markets, because you and I happen to love the macroeconomic side of things. Well, our buddy, Mr. Powell, had a speech at the FOMC meeting, and they held rates steady. And in fact, not only did they hold rates steady, but it seems like they're going to hold rates steadier for longer than was originally anticipated. In fact, many people thought we were going to have a cut this time around. That, you know, over the past couple of weeks, realized that was not going to happen. And they said, well, maybe May, which lines up with the ETH ETF. Well, that's looking like it's not probably going to happen. So maybe June. But one of the things that the Fed has said is they're not going to start cutting rates until they're really sure that inflation is under control. I don't think it's under control. I don't think there's anybody that understands macroeconomics that thinks it's under control. At least maybe they're at least speaking honestly. Let me say that. And this could be good or bad for the markets. Every time that we have a cut, we generally see a pullback in the markets, though I think that we're in a unique cycle. We're in a unique cycle with institutional funds coming in, countries wanting to come in, billionaires wanting to invest. We're in a very unique cycle. And so we might not get the pullbacks that we've had previously, but we still need to pay attention. And what the Fed does affect the markets, as we saw with Jerome Powell's speech. Give us a quick rundown and some thoughts on what happened this week with the Fed.
Sure thing. As we talked about previously, the rates are still set at about 5.25 to 5.5%. The narrative going into this Fed meeting was that they previously had Jerome Powell talking about the potential of 3 different quarter point rate cuts throughout 2024. We are now 2 of the meetings in, right? Because we had January and then we had March. The next meeting is going to be coming up. They're every 45 days. That translates to 2 per quarter and 8 per year, which means that our next one is the 1st of May. And right now, it looks like the CME group has an 89% probability that we are going to stay where we are right now. The reason being is that Jerome Powell has kind of been changing his tune a little bit throughout 2024, especially as we go farther into it now, which is that inflation is still much higher than where they want to see it. And additionally, the rest of the economic data is starting to support that we're moving in a decent direction, but it's not at the point where they want to start cutting interest rates. And they think that if you do that too fast, you might actually end up with kind of that stagflation era where your GDP is not able to grow and your inflation also starts going rampant. Notably, I believe the inflation numbers was like 3.4 and or 3.2 and 3.8% for the year-over-year PCI numbers that came out in March for the month of February. I personally try to always look at the year-over-year inflation data. So that way I'm always looking at the same metric. If you pay attention to some of this stuff, you'll notice that the Fed in particular, especially when it comes to the press releases and also news articles, they kind of cherry pick which different stat they're looking at. However, at the same time, if you've listened to all of the press conferences this year, you will be tired of the phrase, we are committed to 2% inflation, because they say it every time. And yet we are still sitting above 3.0% inflation. And right now it seems like the whole 3 interest rate cuts for 2024 might not be happening. It's entirely possible that we could maybe even see 2 or only 1. However, I will say this much. They always adjust their predictions. And this one, they put out a new PDF document talking about not just Jerome Powell, but the rest of the Fed's predictions for where they see interest rates going in 2024, 25, and 26 later on. I got some here for me. Policy rate at peak, they are dialing it back. They think that we should be at about 4.6% interest rate at the end of 2024, about 3.9% interest rate at the end of 2025, and 3.1% interest rate at the end of 2026. They did get called out a little bit in the presser. If you check it out, someone pointed out like, hey, isn't this an increase in the projections from last time? So yes, there was that. And then if you are interested in the idea of a CBDC, that was the last question that was asked at the press conference, and Jerome Powell emphatically, and again, pretty much boilerplate stuff, was like, yeah, look, we don't have a CBDC. We're not launching anything stealthily. Even if we could, that'd be stupid, and we don't have authorization from Congress. So there you go.
You know what's interesting? In that last point, Jerome Powell also said, I don't even know if a CBDC would be good or bad for our country, which is very interesting. Very interesting. Jerome Powell has actually been one of the more honest people in the government. And look, I trashed Jerome Powell early on for him calling the inflation transitory. I literally burned the guy a new one. But I will say that since then, I have to give him some credit because he seems to be talking honestly. And he doesn't seem to be bending to the will of what the government wants. Now, I don't know if that's true. I have nothing to back it up, only with a personal opinion. Now, I take everything that I hear with a grain of salt. I take everything I hear and I question it. But I think that what he says, has some semblance. Who else has said, I don't even know if a CBDC would be good or bad for the country? That's a very specific thing that he said. He could have just stuck to, look, we have people that are looking into it, researching what it could be. but we don't even have a thought of what that would look like. He didn't have to say, I don't even know if it would be good for the country. And I don't know if that was a read between the line comment, but it's something that really stuck out to me because most people don't say things unless they need to say them. And every once in a while, Jerome slides a few things in there that allow you to read between the lines. Now, I don't know what that means. I really don't. I think it's just him being honest, his personal opinion. Now, granted, his personal opinion only matters in so much as it gets stuff done within the government, but he's not the only person that creates policy within the Fed, right? He's one of a bunch of board members. So
yeah, I think it's a board of like 21 plus. I will say this though, in regards to your comment about Jerome Powell, he is known as the straight shooter. He definitely means what he say what he means. And you see it with this, which is that he's been pretty much following what he's been saying previously. I understand that previously, earlier in the year, the idea was 3 interest rate cuts, but they are starting to move with the data, or as their data is not moving as they predicted, they're willing to adjust, as we see here.
Yeah, and he did kind of say that they're still thinking about 3 rate cuts, right?
Aggressive, but okay.
But a lot of people are thinking that that's going to be very hard to do if you don't even start to, have your first rate cut until June. And if you don't have it until June, like say, let's say they don't even cut in June, right? Then we're going to July, and not just July, but we're talking about July 31st. We're talking about the end of July. We're talking about now 7 full months with no cuts. So if we don't get a cut here in May or June, I think what you're saying, 2 cuts, maybe 1 cut is interesting. And look, you have to take everything that Jerome Powell has said in the past and put them all together. The one thing that he has always said is unless the labor market goes into, a severe unemployment phase, a big regression in the labor market, then we're never going to get those interest rates down. Now, he does use a lot of this speech about saying, look, we don't want the labor market to go down. We want it to still be strong. We want the economy to still be strong while getting interest rates down. But if you read through the lines, I don't know if he thinks that's possible. So you have to kind of take everything that he's said over the past several months and kind of start piecing some of these things together.
I guess another note, one of the questions that a reporter asked him was, are there any other data points besides inflation that will get you to consider cutting rates? And he said that if the labor market weakens significantly, then that could also be an additional trigger for a rate cut.
Yep.
And then, not to get too tinfoil hat with this here, but traditionally, by the data, the Fed tries to cut interest rates at least once or twice during an election year. The last, I believe the November FOMC meeting is on the 7th, and I think that is before Election Day. At that same time, if we look out, we only have 4 more meetings before the November meeting. So seeing 1 rate cut in that time kind of makes sense. Seeing 2 rate cuts might be a bit aggressive. And if you want to space it out so you don't just shock the system all together at once, then it would make sense in my mind to maybe like space them out. Do a rate cut like every other FOMC. And even then, that still lines up with either a May or a July, or maybe the June and September. And again, by historical data, that makes sense with it being a bit of an election year.
Okay, so number one, that does kind of tie in with what I was saying about the crypto market as well. However, I've been hearing big macro guys who talk about this every single day. They've been saying that this year is going to be a year where they are going to cut, but they're going to cut more aggressively, more than likely, and also that they have to cut because of the elections. So the closer we get to the elections, the more things start kind of looking down, as far as, or looking up, my bad, as far as like actual cuts go, I think possibly we get one in May, May 24th. Was it May 24th, right?
May 24th.
Yeah. And then probably skip
May 1st for the FOMC.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
May 24th.
I know, right? All the dates is getting jumbled in my mind too. But so probably one in May and then skip, and then they'll probably do another one basically just before the elections. And then it's like, all right,
Well,
There we
most
go.
people don't think it's going to happen in May. It looks very, very unlikely it's going to happen in May, but
Yeah.
it could happen in June.
Yeah, it seems like then at that point, if they don't do it in May, then it's going to be like really quick. And if nothing else, they may say like, "Oh, we'll just cut one time," just to appease people, and that would be the other one there. So, yeah, I mean, you can't see the future. That's the deal. But when you speculate, you want to make multiple directions, right? Multiple different ways that the future could end up. And so I just laid out 3 of them right there.
Yeah. And the last thing that I want to say on this topic is I'll continue to say this every time we talk about the FOMC. Twice in the past 6 months, they've changed how they calculate inflation. 3 times in the past year. So that makes me think that they're not only looking at the numbers that we get, but they're also potentially looking at what we might have called real numbers a year ago or 2 years ago. So I just want to allow you to, I know a lot of people who watch this channel don't take everything that they see at face value, and you shouldn't. You should question things, but you have to look into it for yourself. Don't take my opinion. Don't take Zenith's opinion. Don't take Dace's opinion. Definitely don't take Dace's opinion. I'm kidding.
Oof.
But
for the folks at home that do want to track this stuff with us in real time, check out cmegroup.com. They have the Fed Watch tool, and that's where we pull a lot of our data from. And just fun fact, by the numbers, there are 2 Fed meetings where the different rate cuts become the most probable solution. The first one is the 12th of June. That is where it is a 67% chance of a single drop. And then right now they have the 18th of September meeting as the 44.3% favorite for a 2-point drop from where we are now. Again, this is all very much probability based and also futures market based, but this is the tool that Brendan and I use a lot. We talk about it pretty frequently, and then I know the rest of the team is poked around with at least a little bit.
Yeah, and I'll just reiterate one thing Zenith said. It's probability. Like I said, if you looked at this 2 months ago, the probability was like 90% that they were going to cut rates this month. That's what everybody was thinking. And that changed really quickly, like in a span of a few days. So do your own research too, because you might be able to come to conclusions faster than the market does. And when you find anomalies in the market, you generally are going to benefit from it. And that's what doing your own research is all about and why it's really important. Because if you just sit back and take everything that comes to you from reliable sources, you're going to be late to the game because they don't want to tell you everything that they know right away. And yeah, we're getting really close to that 10 o'clock hour. So last thing I'll say, they're going to keep rates higher longer. That's the bottom line. As Zenith said, they just snuck it in there that they think we're going to keep rates higher for longer. Now, it could be good for the market, could be bad for the market. Generally speaking, like I said, a cut in rates has always led to a downturn in the market before it goes up. Now, it would be interesting if this time in the summer is where we start to get a little bit of a downturn. However, again, it's a very unique crypto cycle because of all the institutional money coming in. We can't take past 4-year cycles and say this is 100% what's going to happen because this cycle is so unique and so different than anything we have seen before in crypto. So keep your head on a swivel. Make sure you're keeping out for all pertinent, live, fast information, which you can find very commonly in our Telegram. So join that. Smash that like, smash that subscribe, and please, please, please join our community. We have the best community in crypto. It's growing. It's still in a grassroots upwards momentum trajectory, and we want you to be in on the action. Saw a few people joined since we started this stream, so welcome to our community. We couldn't do this without all of you. Well, we could, but it wouldn't be very much fun. We certainly wouldn't be here doing this if we didn't have the support and the community that we have built over the last 7 or 8 months. So please keep us in your mind, in your heart, and continue to work hard to improve yourself mentally, physically, and monetarily, because just having money isn't going to make you happy if the rest of your life isn't in place. Okay, on that note, we are going to start with some outros. Nate, what do you have for the people?
Well, I want to go ahead and say that, yeah, what you just said there, Gary Gensler is a joke. is absolutely true. Get into our Telegram, because there's going to be a lot of people who are starting to get in now, and unfortunately things are not going to go too well for them. We, however, do have the expertise to be able to help you out, to be able to succeed. So I have my link tree right here, and just go ahead, hit me up in there. I'm doing consultations, setting people right. There's a bunch of people who have come through, didn't really have their portfolio, I would say, 100% ready to go. And there are some other people, as of right now, I'm working with them to get everything put together. So yes, I can help you out for sure. The rest of us here in the Telegram and everything can all help. But yes, my consultations are open, and I am going to go ahead and move it over to Zenith by saying this. Absolutely, positively, do not mess with my Pulse or Pulse X.
Love it. We got a lot of stuff coming up this week on Degen Roundtable. Starting this Wednesday, we have our guest spot with Crypto Coffee coming on to talk everything Pulse X, Pulse Chain, and Richard Hart related. Additionally, after that, we have another guest stream. This one is actually a book club guest stream with RG3. We are covering Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. That is the RG3 recommendation, and we appreciate him coming on to talk about it with us. And then, oh God, my apologies. As always, on Sunday after that, we have our usual flagship show next week, same time as always. We're going to be talking about anything and everything that comes up between now and then. And if you cannot get enough, or you cannot wait until next Sunday to hit all those topics, check out the Telegram right there. We do our Tuesday calls, as well as cover anything that comes out during the week and is of urgent importance. Look out for those emergency streams. And that's pretty much what we got going on. Thank you again to A Wild SJ for showing up to the book club this last Friday to talk about chapter 1 of Sci-Vive. That one was very, very dense. That specific chapter is about twice as long, or 3 times as long as the rest of the chapters in the book. So it's definitely an important foundational one to talk about. As always, I'm Zenith. You can catch me on Twitter and Instagram at ZenithDI for my personal page, or if you like crypto memes or want to get a little more education going on there, check out Hexico Space Force on Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. That is what I got. Brendan, take us out of here.
Nate, Zenith, really appreciate you. I don't think we can do a show without 3 people. Just want to give a shout out to Will. Hope all is well with him, and to all the other guys that can't get on stream tonight. We work behind the scenes a lot. So just because people aren't coming on stream doesn't mean that they are not doing immense amounts of work. And if you saw how much effort that we put into building this community behind the scenes, the amount of meetings that we have together to see where we want to take this, we have a lot in the pipeline. And we are building something that I can't talk about yet, but it's going to be something that is unlike anything else that you've seen in crypto. And honestly, if we didn't have 10 people in this community, I don't think we could do it. And, some of us are able to be on stream more. Some people are able to be behind the scenes, working like dogs, getting things done. Some people are, manning those Tuesday Telegram calls to give you pertinent information. And, it's just great that we can have such good conversations, not always agree, but respect what people say, respect what each other says, and try to, find the truth. Really, that's what we're here for. We're not here to be right. We're here to find the truth. And if we have to change our opinions or change our thought process because new data or new information presents itself, then we'll be ready to do that. But if you aren't changing, then you're not growing, okay? And if you're not growing, then you're being stagnant, and you're not going to be in a good place if you stay stagnant. So, if you ever need a consultation, you can hit me up about anything, just about the crypto world, Pulse Chain, Cardano, many different things, or just financial advice, economic advice, macroeconomic advice, whatever you need. We will be opening. These consultations to a few more people within our community soon, which is great. So be on the lookout for that. And Crypto Boogie, Mr. Twinkie, please, once you're done watching us, go hop over to their stream. I did see that they're streaming, and those guys have great information, great TA, and it's always a good time. So thank you, brothers. Thank you, community. Farmer Brown went moon, baby soon. Pack your bags and be patient. I will just tell you that I'm very, very excited for this cycle is going. Who knows for sure? But I have a very good opinion and I have a very good feeling about where this could go. So thank you for joining. Thank you for watching us. Again, we couldn't do this without you. And we will see you on the other side. Degen responsibly. Good night, everybody.